The British government is facing strong criticism from its own supporters over a decision to ask a spy agency to monitor all phone calls, texts, emails and online activity in the country. The Home Office says it's vital the police and security services are able to obtain private communications to investigate serious crime and terrorism. The move is just the latest in a long line of steps which mean Britain is now one of the most surveilled countries in the Western world. From London, Europe correspondent Philip Williams reports.
Like being on camera? Well, London, in fact the whole of the UK, is the place for you. Thanks to the IRA bombing campaign, cities like London are saturated with surveillance cameras. You can smile for them day and night. Before the coalition came to power, there were promises of a so-called Freedom Bill, discarding unnecessarily intrusive surveillance of all kinds. So it's surprising for some on the government's own side, there are now plans to allow the security agency GCHQ access to everyone's phone, email and social media records.
They don't need this law to protect us. This is an unnecessary extension of the ability of the state to snoop on ordinary innocent people in vast numbers, and frankly they shouldn't have that power.
Currently, communications companies have to keep 2 years' records, which can be accessed if a magistrate allows it. Under the new law, every record of every conversation, email, etc. will be available.
Well, we need to be certain that when unpacking information, that all they're capturing is that the person who is making the call or the electronic communication, that they're not capturing the content. Now, I think we can do that. I think that can be guaranteed, but it may actually require some fundamental software changes to ensure that it happens.
But according to the government, it's a necessary update to the law to reflect an ever-changing media environment aimed at combating terrorism and serious crime. It's also a technical challenge that won't come cheaply.
It's a difficult job to keep track of so many different forms of data. Each time we communicate with a company, we use different protocols, different means of sending that, and that's constantly changing and must be kept up with.
It's not the technical, but the cost to liberty and privacy that worries campaign group Big Brother Watch.
The way it works is that if, because of intelligence that they already have, they're worried about prospective terrorist attacks, they can go to a magistrate and say, look, we want to look at the content of this information. They can get that within 24 hours and they can be looking at the content. It just seems absurd for the need to look at everybody in the country's information just in case they might use a buzzword that might flag up something.
Are you concerned that there's not really a lot of public reaction to this? There doesn't seem to be outrage about this.
Oh, I disagree. I think over the last 24 hours, especially young people, they've taken to Facebook and Twitter and general social media, ironically, to say that this is just outrageous. You know, they're organising a let's CC the government into every email day, just so the government can just see how much people communicate via email. I think especially the younger generations are just, they just think it's an absurd use of government time and money, and they're just not willing to accept that.
No doubt some of the spies working here at MI5 will welcome this change. It'll help their business. But there are more than a few people concerned that Big Brother is getting a little too nosy. Philip Williams, Late Line.
And joining us now from our London studio is Europe correspondent Philip Williams. Phil, it does seem extraordinary that they're going to these lengths in a country that's trying to shed 25% of its government in terms of costs and time that's spent in terms of getting rid of layers of bureaucracy.
Yes, it's going to be, we're told, quite intensive in its labour and the cost. And it's, of course, aimed at combating terrorism and serious crime. That's what we're told. But, of course, the worry is not just the cost, it's the intrusiveness. And many of the libertarians saying, well, look, this is, we're told this is just looking at the traffic, where the traffic's going, not actually what's in the emails. But, of course, that's taking everything on trust. And there isn't a lot of that, particularly amongst some of the groups that we've been speaking to, who believe that the government, this is really just one more intrusive element to get into people's lives where they shouldn't be.
And what's the reaction from the coalition partners, the Liberal Democrats, been? I mean, we saw in your package there that one Lib Dem thought that it might work out, that this might be able to be enacted without being too burdensome for the government. But what has generally been the feeling?
Well, of course, you know, naturally, in the natural state of things in British politics, were they not in coalition, they'd be railing against this. But because they are in coalition, they're hampered to a degree, and we do hear these muted concerns, but that's all that we're hearing from the Lib Dems. So far, they're pretty well going along with this, with some reservations, but it's not the Lib Dems of old who would have absolutely slammed this.
And young people, we've already heard there, have registered an online protest, if you like.
Yes, and how ironic that the very traffic that they want to monitor may be the avenue of the greatest protest, that people may organise this sort of social protest, and once this gets going and word gets around, I've no doubt that the government will be hearing from a large number of people through the social media, the very media that they want to look over.
I mean, it's one thing to be able to monitor 4 million CCTV cameras, but 60 million people's communications does seem a big ask.
Well, it's a huge ask, and of course they'll use electronic means to pick key words, key phrases that are being used. But yes, a mammoth task, and as you said earlier, at a time of austerity when they're slashing public services, it does seem like an extraordinary period to be boosting these efforts. Of course, the government says it's necessary for the security of the nation, but there are very many people with lots of big questions as whether the actual method is worth it.
Philip Beams, thank you so much.
Thanks.